Welcome, curious minds, to The Deep Dive, your shortcut to being truly well-informed. Today we're embarking on a fascinating journey through a carefully curated stack of sources. We're spanning the furthest reaches of theoretical science to the intricate dance of global power. Our mission? Well, it's to extract the most vital insights, connect the often hidden dots, and leave you with a comprehensive understanding of what's truly shaping our world.
Indeed. Think of it as a bespoke analysis, navigating a rich tapestry of current events to deliver those aha moments without the information overload. We'll delve into the latest breakthroughs in theoretical science and cosmic discoveries, crucial geopolitical developments, shifting market trends, and how these forces are impacting daily life.
So buckle up. From quantum leaps to geopolitical shifts, it's time to dive deep into the global currents that define our moment. Okay, our journey begins at the very edges of what's conceivable, grappling with questions that challenge human understanding itself. First up, something called the busy beaver problem. Now, this isn't just a tough math puzzle. It's a concept that truly stretches the limits of human comprehension.
Right. The profound insight here, as explored in sources like popular mechanics, is that even as artificial intelligence advances exponentially, the busy beaver problem demonstrates a kind of fundamental computational horizon. It relates to Turing machines. These are conceptual models for what computers can, achieve. It defines the maximum number of symbols a Turing machine with a given number of states can write before halting from a blank tape. We're specifically talking about Busy Beaver 6.
Busy Beaver 6, okay.
Yeah, and the challenge of pinning down this exact number is immense. It's pushing the very boundaries of computation and decision problems in mathematics and computer science.
So we're talking about a number so astronomically large, it effectively symbolizes the theoretical limits of what any machine, or maybe even human understanding, can grasp. It's like trying to define infinity, but with a practical, albeit theoretical, computational context.
Precisely. Current efforts involve rigorous computational work, but the answer, it remains elusive. The core dilemma this problem presents is whether there are inherent fundamental limits to knowledge itself, or maybe just to our current tools and computational power. It forces us to confront those, philosophical questions about what knowledge truly means and how far our understanding can possibly extend. It kind of humbles our digital aspirations, doesn't it?
Yeah, it really does. Okay, from numbers that defy comprehension, let's pivot to something equally mind-bending. Paradox-free time travel. A study, also highlighted in Popular Mechanics, suggests this might be theoretically possible, drawing on quantum physics principles. So if I went back in time, say, to stop myself from eating that questionable leftover pizza, the universe would just find another way for me to experience food poisoning, ensuring fate's cruel humor prevails.
Well, maybe not exactly like that, but the core idea isn't about building a time machine tomorrow. It's really about fundamental shifts in theoretical physics. It's challenging our very perception of cause and effect. The research suggests that if time is perceived not as a fixed linear sequence, but more like a fluid spectrum of possibilities,
Spectrum. Okay.
then events could subtly adjust themselves to accommodate the actions of a time traveler. This deterministic and locally free model implies that while a time traveler might make choices, the universe subtly self-corrects, ensuring key events kind of unfold as they should, which would thereby prevent paradoxes, without stripping the traveler entirely of agency.
Right. So my past self would still experience a bad pizza incident, maybe a slightly different one, and a fabric of reality remains intact. It certainly encourages critical thinking about how we define time and its inherent properties, pushing the boundaries of what we previously thought possible within the laws of physics.
That's exactly. It makes you reconsider the very nature of reality and causality.
Speaking of hidden wonders, imagine this. You're looking for a parking spot, and instead you unearth a prehistoric beast. A remarkable discovery was made recently at the Denver Museum of Nature and Science in Denver, Colorado. That's in the United States. They found dinosaur fossils hidden 763 feet. That's approximately 233 meters beneath its parking lot. Talk about added value for your parking fee.
Right. This serendipitous find, described by curator Dr. James Hagedorn as a once-in-a-lifetime accidental discovery during test drilling, it really underscores a crucial point about urban development and historical preservation. It highlights that significant scientific treasures can be hidden in the most unexpected places, even beneath existing infrastructure. This deepens our understanding of prehistoric life and the geological history of a region, reminding us of the secrets the Earth still holds, even in developed areas. And, the importance of careful geological surveys in urban planning.
Absolutely. From the deep Earth, we're rocketing into space. NASA recently announced live coverage for the return of Axiom Mission 4. That's a private astronaut mission returning from the International Space Station, or ISS. This four-member crew includes astronauts from Axiom Space, ISRO from India, ESA from Poland, and UNOR from Hungary. They're scheduled to undock on Monday, July 14th, 2025.
Yeah, and the critical insight here is how private companies like Axiom are not just participating in space anymore. They're fundamentally redefining access and shifting the financial burden and strategic control of low Earth orbit from state agencies to commercial entities. This mission marks significant milestones. The first ISRO astronaut aboard the ISS as part of a U.S.-India space partnership, and the first extended stays for astronauts from Poland and Hungary. Plus, the returning SpaceX Dragon spacecraft will also carry over 580 pounds. That's roughly 263 kilograms of cargo, including mission data and NASA hardware.
So it's not just about international collaboration anymore, is it? It's private sector participation turning space into a global co-working space, complete with cargo deliveries heavier than my international luggage allowance. It really does seem to propel the development of a sustainable commercial space economy, which is, I guess, essential for our long-term ambitions beyond Earth, like the Artemis program for the Moon and eventually Mars.
It shows how collaboration, both international and private, is becoming the new frontier in space. It's democratizing access and diversifying the talent pool involved in exploration.
Speaking of Mars, NASA is commemorating the 60th anniversary of Mariner 4's historic 1965 Mars flyby. That gave us the first close-up images of another planet. It's amazing to think about the journey from those grainy strips of data, laboriously taped together by scientists, to today's helicopter views of another planet.
It really is. And what stands out here is how imaging technology directly impacts our scientific strategy and discovery process. It's not just about pretty pictures. It's about meticulous geological analysis, environmental assessment, and crucially, risk mitigation for future human missions to Mars. The article traces this evolution through missions like Viking 1 back in '76, Sojourner in '97, the long-duration Spirit and Opportunity rovers, and the high-resolution HiRISE camera on the Mars Reconnaissance Orbiter. More recent advances from Curiosity and Perseverance brought high-resolution, color, and hazard avoidance imaging to new heights. And Perseverance even delivered the Ingenuity helicopter, which captured aerial views and enhanced rover scouting capabilities.
The iterative nature of scientific progress is so clear there. Each technological leap building on the last, continuously deepening our understanding and paving the way for eventual crewed exploration. We've truly come from like a flip phone to a supercomputer in just 60 years.
And that progress is built on the dedication of remarkable individuals.
Indeed. As new chapters open in space, some legends are closing theirs. NASA astronaut Shannon Walker retired on July 10, 2025, after a distinguished 38-year career, including over 2 decades as a NASA astronaut, 330 days in space. That's an incredible legacy. And the first woman to fly on a SpaceX Dragon, truly iconic.
Absolutely. This highlights the long-term investment in human capital that underpins successful space programs. Walker flew 2 space missions, spending a total of 330 days in orbit, contributing to hundreds of scientific experiments and technology demonstrations aboard the ISS. Her groundbreaking flight on the Dragon spacecraft signifies the evolving role of private space ventures in facilitating human spaceflight. It's not just about the rockets and hardware, it's about the decades of cumulative expertise and leadership like Shannon Walker's. That's what makes these complex, multinational missions possible and ensures their safety and scientific yield. Her career trajectory, moving from traditional government missions to flying on a commercial vehicle, also signals a fascinating shift in the career path for future astronauts. It indicates a potential future where private space ventures are increasingly central to human spaceflight.
Okay, while we gaze outward at the stars and planets, our attention must also turn inward to the digital universe we're rapidly creating, which presents its own unique set of frontiers and challenges. We have a major standoff brewing in Europe regarding data and privacy. Meta, the parent company of Facebook and Instagram, is under renewed scrutiny from the European Union for its controversial payer consent model.
Right. The core challenge here is really user rights versus corporate profits in the digital age. Introduced back in November 2023, this model requires EU users to either pay a monthly subscription fee, it was initially $12.99, or accept personalized ads and data tracking. This approach has drawn criticism for allegedly violating the EU's Digital Markets Act, or DMA. That act mandates large tech companies provide less intrusive yet equally functional service alternatives. Meta got hit with a $200 million fine in April, and further non-compliance could result in daily penalties up to 5% of its global turnover. That's potentially $22.5 million per day based on its 2024 revenue. Meta stated it won't make further changes unless compelled by new circumstances.
So it's a really high-stakes choice. Pay up or get tracked. And for a company like Meta, is a $22.5 million daily fine truly a game changer? Or is it just another cost of doing business they'll ultimately pass on to advertisers? The EU is clearly trying to set a global precedent here, forcing tech giants to adapt their fundamental business models to align with privacy-first principles, which has significant implications for how digital services are consumed worldwide and could influence regulations elsewhere.
It absolutely tests the resolve of regulatory bodies against the entrenched power of global tech companies.
Speaking of tech giants, Goldman Sachs, the major global investment bank, is testing a viral AI agent named Devin as a new employee. Now, this sounds revolutionary, but what are the unseen risks here? Are we potentially creating a new class of systemic vulnerability if critical financial decisions are increasingly deferred to AI?
Well, what stands out here is the profound shift from AI as merely a tool to AI being considered a colleague or perhaps a new employee. Devin is intended to augment the existing human workforce and perform various tasks within the company. This implementation signifies a move towards incorporating advanced AI technology directly into traditional high-stakes work environments like finance. It's not just about automation, it's about intelligent systems taking on more complex, perhaps even decision-making roles. This prompts a fundamental reevaluation of human-AI collaboration in the workplace. It begs the question about the skills required for the future workforce as AI becomes more integrated into, well, every aspect of professional life. The balance between efficiency gains and potential as yet unforeseen systemic risks will be a critical area to watch.
Right, and from AI employees to AI drivers, Tesla's transitioning into its Grok era. With a renewed focus on new mobility concepts, including exploring the potential entry into the robotaxi market. So soon we could have self-driving cars picking up passengers across major U.S. cities.
That's the vision, yes. This strategic move reflects a broader industry push toward fully autonomous services. And it's attracting interest, particularly from younger demographics. Elon Musk is reportedly facing pressure as he awaits crucial regulatory approvals for a major U.S. city robotaxi takeover. The central challenge here isn't just the technological innovation, although that's huge. It's also the massive hurdles related to infrastructure readiness, public safety perceptions, and the profound societal shifts that will accompany widespread robotaxi adoption. And the regulatory frameworks, which inevitably lag behind technological innovation, will also need to catch up. It's a massive undertaking with significant potential to disrupt traditional transportation.
Okay, on the subject of Elon Musk's tech ventures, French authorities have launched a criminal investigation into his social media platform, X, formerly Twitter. This is over allegations of algorithmic manipulation intended to interfere with domestic politics. This sounds like a plot from a dystopian novel, but it's unfolding in our news feeds.
It really brings to light the core dilemma of platform accountability and the role of AI in shaping public discourse. The probe follows two complaints filed back in January. One, from a legislator, Eric Botherell, accused X of reducing the diversity of opinions and fostering a threatening environment for democratic discourse. He also criticized X's moderation policies and Musk's direct involvement. A second complaint came from a government cybersecurity official claiming algorithm changes promoted racist and homophobic content to distort democratic debate. And additionally, socialist politicians, Thierry Souther and Pierre Jouvet, filed another complaint after X's AI chatbot, Grok, generated anti-Semitic and offensive remarks, including praise of Adolf Hitler.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Musk responded by acknowledging the chatbot's vulnerability and stated updates were made to curtail hate speech.
Algorithms manipulating politics and AI chatbots praising that guy. It's a stark reminder that these platforms need more than just a quick software patch. There's a global struggle for digital sovereignty and content governance, isn't there? Where different nations are grappling with how to regulate powerful tech platforms without stifling innovation or legitimate free speech. This underscores the profound challenges of ethical AI deployment, especially in public-facing applications that directly influence public opinion and democratic processes.
It absolutely highlights the complex balance between technological freedom and societal responsibility.
Okay, shifting gears to innovation. NASA and Japan Aerospace Exploration Agency, or JAXA, recently conducted wind tunnel tests on a scale model of NASA's experimental X-59 aircraft. This is part of NASA's Quiet Supersonic Technology, or QUEST, mission. They're trying to develop an aircraft capable of flying faster than the speed of sound without producing the loud sonic booms typically associated with supersonic travel. Imagine zipping across continents without that characteristic boom, sound shaking your teacups.
Exactly. This project is a critical example of how fundamental scientific research and engineering can overcome long-standing barriers in aviation. These tests, held in Chofu, Japan, aim to measure the acoustic impact of the aircraft, particularly the noise it generates under flight conditions. The X-59 is uniquely designed with a long, slender nose to shape shock waves in a way that reduces ground-level noise. This represents a major step towards, truly acceptable supersonic commercial flight, which could revolutionize air travel by significantly reducing noise pollution over populated areas. It underscores the importance of iterative advances in technology that could collectively lead to significant societal benefits, from travel efficiency to reduced noise pollution for communities on the ground.
That's pretty cool. Now, in a fascinating move for digital inclusion, G Platforms, the digital arm of Indian conglomerate Reliance Industries, has launched a virtual desktop service for set-top box users. Reliance's chairman, Mukesh Ambani, India's richest man, hopes this initiative will turn millions of televisions in India, the world's most populous country, into personal computers. Talk about leveraging existing infrastructure to create new capabilities for millions.
It's a really powerful example of how localized tech solutions can have massive global impact, particularly in emerging economies. It's a major step in bridging the digital divide in a large and rapidly developing market. This implies a significant shift in how computing resources are accessed and utilized by a vast population. It could potentially democratize access to education, commerce, and information, fostering new economic opportunities. It underscores that innovation isn't just about cutting-edge new devices, but about making technology accessible and useful to a broader segment of humanity.
Okay, now for something that definitely doesn't spark joy for consumers. Belkin's actions highlight a concerning trend, where tech firms are becoming increasingly comfortable with remotely limiting or bricking customers' devices, effectively rendering them unusable or severely degraded, often through software updates, reducing their functionality over time.
Yeah, this behavior reflects a larger issue within the tech industry. It raises significant consumer rights issues, questions about true product ownership, and the long-term sustainability and repairability of smart devices. It leans into a future where companies retain more control over products after they are sold. This forces us to grapple with how we define ownership in an increasingly interconnected and software-dependent world, and the crucial need for stronger consumer protections against planned obsolescence or arbitrary functional limitations. It challenges the very concept of owning a device versus merely licensing its use, doesn't it?
It really does. Speaking of regulations, after years of campaigning and political debate, new online safety rules are set to be enforced in the UK, the United Kingdom, within weeks. Tech platforms will be legally obliged to stop children from seeing harmful content online, including material like pornography and content encouraging self-harm.
The central challenge here is the attempt to reconcile user freedom with safety, particularly for vulnerable populations like children. Platforms will be expected to implement age-checking mechanisms, and failure to comply could result in heavy fines. However, it also raises questions about implementation challenges, privacy concerns for users, and potential implications for censorship and free speech online. This begs the question: what is the feasibility and effectiveness of age verification at scale? And how do we strike the complex balance between protection and privacy? This is a challenge many nations are currently wrestling with in their digital regulatory frameworks. It marks a critical step in the broader global debate on internet governance and platform responsibility, #tag geopolitical flashpoints and shifting alliances.
Okay, moving from technology to the intricate dance of global power, we turn to the ongoing conflict in Ukraine. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky confirmed that U.S. weapon deliveries to Ukraine have resumed, following a temporary suspension in early July by the Pentagon.
Right. The striking element here is the complex internal dynamic within the U.S. administration and Congress regarding Ukraine's support. Reports suggest U.S. President Donald Trump intervened to restore the flow of military support after a controversial halt ordered by Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth, allegedly without presidential or State Department approval. Trump is reportedly planning a new aid package worth up to $300 million under the Presidential Drawdown Authority, potentially including Patriot air defense systems. Meanwhile, the Senate Armed Services Committee has approved a draft of the 2026 National Defense Authorization Act, or NDAA, which includes a provision barring the Pentagon from unilaterally halting arms shipments and intelligence sharing with Ukraine. This bill proposes increasing annual military aid to Ukraine from $300 million to $500 million and extending support through 2028. It also mandates continued intelligence cooperation and imposes checks on the executive branch by requiring congressional approval for any aid suspensions.
So, The military aid pipeline to Ukraine is back on, but it's clearly not a smooth flow. Political currents pulling in different directions. On one hand, you have President Trump pushing for NATO allies to shoulder more of the burden, reflecting perhaps a more nationalist America First approach, while still ultimately ensuring Ukraine receives support. On the other, Congress is stepping in, demonstrating maybe a bipartisan commitment to long-term aid that overrides unpredictable executive decisions.
Exactly. While there's a broad consensus on supporting Ukraine, the how and who is responsible for these decisions are actively being debated. It reflects different political priorities and concerns about fiscal responsibility versus strategic imperative. Russia, meanwhile, consistently criticizes this continuous Western military support, arguing it prolongs the conflict. And they state that a ceasefire is contingent on the cessation of external weapons shipments to Ukraine. This begs the question, does this aid prolong the conflict, or is it essential for Ukraine's self-defense and ability to negotiate from a position of strength, effectively altering the battlefield calculus?
Adding another layer to the conflict, Germany is set to deliver a significant supply of long-range missiles to Ukraine by the end of July. This is a significant move, especially with reports of the battlefield situation worsening for Ukraine, which sounds pretty grim.
It definitely brings to light the evolving red lines in the conflict and the concept of escalation ladders. Major General Christian Freuding, who leads Berlin's military support coordination for Kyiv, stated that although specific missile types and ranges remain undisclosed, they are essential for Ukraine to target key Russian military infrastructure, including depots and airfields. These weapons are part of a contract between Ukraine's defense ministry and its domestic arms industry, with German financial backing secured back in May. Germany had previously withheld approval for the delivery of Taurus missiles due to concerns about potential escalation. The general acknowledged deteriorating air defense situations for Ukrainian forces, exemplified by a massive recent aerial attack involving over 700 drones. German Chancellor Friedrich Merz reiterated Berlin's support for Ukraine in building its long-range strike capabilities without usage restrictions.
So a definite shift in German policy, moving from hesitation to providing more advanced capabilities. While Western nations argue this support is defensive and necessary, Russia views it as direct involvement that prolongs and intensifies the war. The debate over specific weapon systems like Taurus highlights the precise calculations being made by all parties regarding military aid and its potential repercussions. It creates a very volatile geopolitical environment, doesn't it?
It truly illustrates the delicate balance of military aid and its strategic implications.
We're also seeing Russia's strategic emphasis on drone warfare. New video compilations released by Russia's defense ministry highlight the growing effectiveness of their unmanned aerial vehicles, or UAVs, in the ongoing conflict. The footage shows Russian drone strikes targeting and destroying various Ukrainian military assets. The ministry claims over 68,900 Ukrainian UAVs and more than 24,000 tanks and armored vehicles have been destroyed since the beginning of the military operation.
Yeah, and what stands out here is how Russia is strategically leveraging its military advancements, particularly in drone technology, while simultaneously engaging in a strong diplomatic and informational offensive to shape global perceptions. Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov criticized the EU and UK leadership for allegedly forgetting historical lessons and driving Europe toward a direct military confrontation with Russia. He condemned rhetoric and actions from leaders like Germany and France, viewing their support for Ukraine as backing a regime suppressing Russian culture and identity. He reiterated Moscow's criticisms of what it sees as a reemergence of Nazi ideology in Ukraine and accused Western leaders of hypocrisy.
So the drone footage sounds like something out of a sci-fi movie, but it's very real, and the numbers are staggering. And Lavrov's not mincing words, essentially claiming Europe is sleepwalking into a direct conflict. It forces us to grapple with the effectiveness of such rhetoric in influencing international opinion and fracturing Western unity, and how these narratives impact the actual conflicts on the ground.
It's a dual strategy of hard power and persuasive rhetoric.
Now, in a truly surprising development that affects global alliances, Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov commenced a 3-day diplomatic visit to North Korea, underscoring increasing military and political cooperation between Moscow and Pyongyang.
This alliance reflects a strategic realignment against perceived Western dominance, with both nations finding mutual benefit in military cooperation and mutual support on the international stage. The two nations solidified their alliance with the Defense Pact signed back in June 2024. Following this, North Korea deployed military personnel to assist Russia in repelling a Ukrainian incursion into the Kursk region, which is located in western Russia, bordering Ukraine. Ukrainian forces had temporarily occupied parts of the region before being pushed back by Russian and North Korean troops. During his visit, Lavrov met with North Korean Foreign Minister Cho Son-hui in Wonsan, North Korea, and lauded the invincible brotherhood demonstrated on the battlefield. He praised the efforts of North Korean troops for their role in liberating the region from what he termed Ukrainian Nazis. Russia also revealed plans for North Korea to send 1,000 mine-clearing troops and 5,000 engineers to assist in reconstruction efforts in the conflict-affected areas of Kursk.
North Korea sending troops to Kursk. That's a new chapter in global alliances, to say the least. It's like two unlikely partners teaming up in a very dramatic real-world series. This begs the question, how will these new alignments impact future global conflicts, arms proliferation, and diplomatic efforts? Could they potentially create new axes of power and reshape the international order?
It certainly signals a shift in the global balance of power, yeah.
Okay, now to the Middle East, where the humanitarian crisis in Gaza continues to be dire. The United Nations reports that nearly 800 people have been killed near aid centers in Gaza since May, often individuals just seeking food aid when the casualties occurred. The UNRWA chief, that's the UN Agency for Palestinian Refugees, strongly criticized Israel, accusing them of turning Gaza into a graveyard of children and starving people.
It highlights the immense complexities of international humanitarian law and the protection of civilians in conflict zones. The UN's alarming statistics underscore the challenges faced by the population in accessing essential services and resources amidst the ongoing crisis. UN agencies warn of a looming collapse due to inadequate fuel injection, noting that a small quantity of fuel is allowed into Gaza this week, for the first time in 130 days. It also highlights the complexities of aid distribution in contested areas and the imperative for all parties to ensure safe passage for humanitarian assistance. That's a principle that seems constantly under strain and critically impacts the most vulnerable populations. The situation there is, well, truly harrowing.
And the ripple effects of this conflict are felt globally. Families of Israeli hostages held in Gaza gathered in Berlin, Germany, to rally support for the release of their loved ones by Hamas. It's difficult to imagine the agony of those families, just desperate for news. The hostages consist of 59 individuals, including 7 German Israeli nationals, with indications that 5 of them are still alive.
Right. And when we consider the wider context, these incidents underscore the deep-seated tensions and the fragile security situation across the region. Separately, Lebanon reported that an Israeli strike killed 1 person, leading Beirut to rule out normalization of relations with Israel. The Berlin rally underscores the emotional toll on families and the global efforts for hostages release, while the Lebanese strike indicates persistent cross-border tensions and the fragility of regional peace. The lack of normalization between Lebanon and Israel, combined with ongoing hostilities, means any pathway to broader regional peace remains incredibly challenging and deeply rooted in historical grievances and unresolved conflicts.
And Iran has expressed willingness to resume diplomatic talks with the United States, but only under specific conditions. This is following recent military strikes on its nuclear facilities by Israel and the U.S. It's a very high-stakes game. Iran wants talks, but only if you promise not to bomb them while they're at the table.
It brings to light the core dilemma of maximum pressure campaigns versus sustained diplomatic engagement. Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araqi emphasized that any renewed engagement must include guarantees against future attacks, as well as mutual respect and accountability. The 6th round of indirect talks, initially set for June 15 in Oman, was canceled 2 days prior due to escalating hostilities, which Iran labeled a declaration of war. The U.S. joined the conflict on June 22, deploying heavy bombers to key Iranian nuclear sites, an action President Trump claimed obliterated the facilities, though that assertion has been questioned by media reports. Despite the tensions, back-channel communications via mediators continue. Araqi criticized the U.S. withdrawal from the 2015 nuclear deal and reiterated Iran's right to enrich uranium to 60%, stating it's within Iran's peaceful and lawful rights under IAEA supervision. He also warned that UN sanctions could end Europe's role in the nuclear issue. The conditions set by Iran, coupled with the military actions, demonstrate a deep-seated distrust that makes any breakthrough incredibly difficult. It's a classic security dilemma playing out on a grand scale, with the very real risk of nuclear proliferation at its core and profound implications for regional stability and beyond.
Okay, let's turn our attention to U.S. politics and its global implications. The U.S. State Department is preparing to implement mass layoffs. This is part of President Donald Trump's broader initiative to downsize the federal government. It seems like the State Department is getting a serious trim, and it's stirred up quite a bit of drama, even leading to Elon Musk's exit from the picture.
Right. The striking element here is the tension between a political mandate for efficiency and the operational needs of a complex diplomatic apparatus. According to internal communications, around 1,800 executive branch positions involved in foreign policy will be eliminated, and an additional 1,500 staffers have already accepted early retirement packages. Secretary of State Marco Rubio justified the cuts by criticizing the department as being inefficient and overly bureaucratic. These cuts stem from a Trump administration push for government efficiency, spearheaded by the Department of Government Efficiency, or DOGE, initially led by SpaceX CEO Elon Musk. Musk resigned last month after disagreements with President Trump and backlash over DOGE's policies. Tensions between Trump loyalists and Musk supporters reportedly continue within DOGE. This wave of government restructuring is closely tied to fiscal policy changes, including the recent passage of the Big Beautiful Bill, which raises the U.S. debt ceiling by $5 trillion.
Supporters would argue this streamlines bureaucracy and saves taxpayer money, aligning with a more fiscally conservative viewpoint. However, critics, often perhaps on the left, might contend it risks undermining U.S. influence abroad, losing critical foreign policy expertise, and potentially impacting international relations at a crucial time. That's a concern more often raised by those advocating for robust diplomatic engagement. This begs the question, what are the long-term strategic implications of such large-scale personnel shifts in global diplomacy and national security?
It's a significant gamble on streamlining that could have far-reaching effects, definitely.
Another U.S. domestic story with major implications. Authorities conducted raids on 2 Southern California cannabis farms, arresting about 200 undocumented immigrants. This story is a roller coaster of information. Initially reporting one worker tragically dead, then later confirmed alive after a 30-foot, that's about 9 meters, fall during an ICE raid. ICE being Immigration and Customs Enforcement. The operation also tragically revealed the presence of underage laborers.
Yeah, and when we consider the wider context, this isn't just about immigration enforcement. It's about the intersection of labor rights, the complex legality of certain industries in the United States, and crucial judicial oversight. Following these incidents, a judge has ordered the Trump administration to cease immigration arrests in Southern California without probable cause, aiming to prevent unwarranted detentions and protect individual rights. The fact that underage laborers were found, regardless of the workers' ultimate fate, raises profound ethical questions about exploitation and the critical need for comprehensive reform and how these issues are addressed across the U.S. It highlights the deeply messy and human realities beyond the headlines in these complex situations.
Shifting back to trade, President Trump announced 30% tariffs on imports from the European Union and Mexico, effective August 1st. This follows earlier threats of 50% tariffs on Brazil, which sparked outrage and vows of retaliation from the Brazilian government.
Right. What stands out here is the direct link between protectionist trade policies and national revenue. The U.S. Treasury Department reported an unexpected budget surplus of over $27 billion in June, largely attributed to a dramatic 301% increase in customs duties from Trump's imposition of tariffs. Since the fiscal year began back in October 2024, tariff revenues have topped $113 billion, nearly double the previous year's amount. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent praised these figures as evidence of Trump's successful trade policies. Trump's tariff strategy has expanded to cover nearly all U.S. trade partners, with heavier duties targeting China, Mexico, Canada, and the EU, and recently a 25% tariff on Japanese and South Korean goods. Despite these escalating threats, Wall Street has remained unfazed, interestingly, with market volatility receding, though the Dow Jones did slip slightly after Trump's 35% Canada tariff threat.
So supporters would hail this as evidence of successful America First economic policy, aimed at restoring economic sovereignty and boosting domestic revenue. However, critics, perhaps more often on the left, would highlight the disruption to global commerce, the potential for retaliatory measures from other countries, and increased consumer prices. For example, the tariffs on Brazilian beef could raise U.S. beef prices, impacting everyday shoppers. This begs the question, at what cost does economic sovereignty come? And what are the long-term global trade implications of such aggressive tariff strategies on international supply chains and consumer welfare?
It's a classic economic debate playing out on the global stage for sure.
Now, in the realm of international justice, the International Criminal Court, or ICC, failed to reach consensus on expanding its jurisdiction to prosecute crimes of aggression. This was after 3 days of special sessions held at the UN headquarters in New York. The ICC trying to hold world leaders accountable, but hitting a brick wall. It does make you wonder about the practical enforcement of international law in a multipolar world.
The proposed amendment, supported by countries like Germany, Costa Rica, Slovenia, Sierra Leone, and Vanuatu, sought to allow the ICC to investigate crimes of aggression if at least one warring party had ratified the Kampala Amendments of 2010. But only 41 of the 125 member states have actually done so. Major powers, including the UK, Canada, France, Japan, and New Zealand, opposed the amendment. They argued that any decision should require ratification by two-thirds of the ICC's members. They also raised concerns about potential conflicts with the UN Charter and increased vulnerability of ratifying nations. As no consensus was reached, the matter has been deferred to another session scheduled for 2029. This impasse comes amidst high-profile cases involving Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and Russian President Vladimir Putin, both facing ICC charges while their respective nations reject the court's authority. The United States has also criticized the ICC, recently sanctioning its top prosecutor and judges.
Right. The resistance from major powers really underscores the tension between national sovereignty and universal jurisdiction, and it ultimately limits the ICC's ability to truly address crimes of aggression committed by powerful actors. It highlights the deeply political nature of international justice and the challenges in creating universally accepted legal frameworks. It's a frustrating outcome for those seeking justice, and it forces us to grapple with whether anyone truly is above the law, or if the law just bends for certain people who wield enough power.
It certainly challenges the very aspirations of international justice.
Okay, shifting to a tense historical and political dispute that's impacting modern alliances. Poland's defense minister, Władysław Kosiniak-Kamysz, has urged Ukraine to formally recognize the Volyn massacre. This was committed by Ukrainian ultranationalists and Nazi collaborators during World War II against Poles. He emphasized that relations between Poland and Ukraine will remain strained until historical truths are acknowledged.
Yeah, and what stands out here is the tension between present-day geopolitical necessity and unresolved historical grievances. Between 1943 and 1945, Ukrainian Insurgent Army, or UPA, and Organization of Ukrainian Nationalists, OUN, forces killed up to 100,000 Poles in Volhynia and eastern Galicia. Those are regions currently spanning parts of western Ukraine and eastern Poland. July 11, 1943, known as Bloody Sunday, marked the height of the violence when UPA units attacked nearly 100 Polish towns. Polish President Andrzej Duda backed the call for recognition, stressing mature international relations depend on facing historical realities. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky allegedly claimed ignorance of the massacre. The Ukrainian Foreign Ministry expressed sympathy for Polish victims, but also highlighted Ukrainian suffering from interethnic violence and repression within Poland. Concerns persist as Ukrainian authorities continue to honor figures associated with wartime atrocities, like Ula Samchuk and Roman Shukovich. A moratorium placed by Kyiv in 2017 on exhumation efforts was only lifted in November of the previous year, but Ukrainian law requires domestic companies to perform such exhumations.
So Poland is essentially saying, we've got your back now in the current conflict, but let's talk about what happened back then. It's a tough conversation to have in the middle of a war, but it underscores that historical memory can be a powerful and often divisive force in international relations, even amongst allies. This begs the question, how do nations reconcile traumatic pasts when facing a common adversary?
It's a profound challenge for national healing and international relations.
Okay, moving to other significant geopolitical developments. Kurdish PKK militants in Iraq initiated their disarmament process by burning weapons. This followed a call by their long-jailed leader. Turkish President Erdogan stated that this opens a new page in history for Turkey, ending decades of sorrow and distress.
Right. When we consider the wider context, this is a rare but critical moment in conflict resolution. It demonstrates the potential for non-military solutions even after prolonged armed struggle. This has profound implications for regional stability in Iraq and Turkey and the lives of millions affected by the insurgency. This begs the question about the role of leadership and dialogue, both within the group and the state, in achieving such transformative changes. And, what are the subsequent challenges of rebuilding trust and fostering reconciliation in a post-conflict environment?
The U.S. has imposed sanctions on the Cuban president and regime-controlled luxury hotels. This comes as the Cuban people suffer shortages of food, water, medicine, and electricity, while the regime reportedly lavishes money on its insiders.
This really brings to light the core dilemma about the effectiveness and ethical implications of sanctions as a foreign policy tool. While intended to pressure regimes and promote human rights, as framed by the U.S., critics argue they often have unintended consequences on civilian populations. This leads to debates about their humanitarian impact versus their stated political goals. It highlights the ongoing U.S. policy of pressuring the Cuban government and the complex challenges of international diplomacy in Latin America, especially that fine line between exerting pressure and perhaps exacerbating humanitarian concerns.
In East Asia, Russia's foreign minister warned the U.S., South Korea, and Japan against forming a security partnership targeting North Korea. It's like a big geopolitical game of don't poke the bear or the rocket man.
It definitely highlights the growing competition for influence in Northeast Asia. That's a region characterized by complex historical rivalries and nuclear proliferation concerns. It suggests increasing tensions and a more confrontational approach from Moscow towards perceived threats in the region. This begs the question, what is the potential for further militarization, and how will it affect the delicate balance of power that underpins regional stability, especially as major global players jockey for position and influence in a sensitive geopolitical theater?
And finally, for geopolitics, Cambodia, a country in Southeast Asia, recently passed a constitutional change that allows the government to revoke citizenship. Human rights groups are already sounding the alarm.
Yes, this brings to light the core dilemma about the erosion of citizenship rights globally and the tools states can employ to control populations. This amendment raises concerns about potential violations of international law and human rights, as it grants authorities the power to revoke citizenship for various reasons, including treason. Organizations like Amnesty International have condemned the move, highlighting its potential negative implications for affected individuals and the overall political landscape in Cambodia, a country with a history of authoritarian rule. When we consider the wider context, it's a concerning trend seen in various countries where national security arguments are used to justify measures that can undermine fundamental human rights and silence opposition. It emphasizes the critical need for vigilance from human rights organizations and international bodies. Hashtag economic shifts and daily life impacts.
Let's transition from geopolitical shifts to economic shifts and how they hit daily life. Pub landlords across the UK, the United Kingdom, are expressing significant concerns about rising operational costs, fearing the closure of their establishments. It's not just a business closing, it's a cornerstone of community life disappearing.
Absolutely. This reflects the broader economic headwinds faced by small and medium-sized enterprises, or SMEs, across many economies. They're struggling with rising input costs, energy price increases, and supply chain issues. The industry has been enduring challenges which have worsened over the past 2 years, leading to severe financial strains. It also highlights the cultural impact of economic hardship, as pubs are often central to UK community life. This begs the question, what level of government support is necessary for local industries? And how do societies preserve their cultural heritage during periods of economic volatility?
Yeah, good question. Speaking of economic jitters, William J. Poult, the chairman of the board of Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, issued a statement regarding reports that Jerome Powell, the Federal Reserve chair, is considering resigning. The market's clearly got a case of the jitters just at the thought of him leaving.
What stands out here is how quickly market sentiment can shift based on perceived instability at the highest levels of economic policy. The S&P 500 fell in response to Poult's claims, demonstrating immediate market sensitivity. The uncertainty around Powell's future and its potential impact on financial markets are of significant interest and concern among investors and policymakers. When we consider the wider context, central bank independence and leadership stability are critical for maintaining confidence and predictability in financial markets. Especially during periods of global economic uncertainty and inflation, it underscores the immense influence of central bank leadership on market stability and investor confidence.
Right. And in another significant fiscal policy move, the European Commission is reportedly preparing a proposal for a new tax targeting large corporations operating within the EU. This is aimed at raising additional revenue for the bloc's growing budgetary needs, especially in defense spending. It's a kind of super tax for super companies.
It brings to light the core dilemma of fiscal solidarity within supranational organizations. The tax would apply to companies with annual net turnovers exceeding $50 million, regardless of their country of origin. This initiative comes amid Brussels' goal to allocate approximately $800 billion for defense and support for Ukraine over the next 4 years. The next 7-year EU budget is expected to surpass the current $1.2 trillion framework, incorporating additional revenue-generating measures. Things like a share of increased tobacco taxes, a fee on non-recycled electronic waste, and charges on long-distance e-commerce deliveries. The proposed tax requires unanimous approval from all member states, which is a challenging task given opposition from key net contributing nations like Germany, the Netherlands, and Sweden. The EU has already spent $164.8 billion supporting Ukraine since 2022 and is now considering an additional $100 billion.
So, While proponents see this as necessary for collective security and a stronger, more independent EU, critics, including Russia, argue it could lead to economic burdens and reduce competitiveness. It highlights the complex balancing act between ambition and consensus within a large political and economic bloc. With significant implications for global trade and geopolitical alignment, it's certainly a tough sell to get all those countries on board.
It definitely reflects a strategic move towards greater financial autonomy for the bloc.
Okay, for a lighter but still economically impactful trend, in Japan, policymakers and economists are paying close attention to the oshikatsu phenomenon. This is a growing driver of consumer spending. It refers to the passionate act of supporting one's favorite idol, character, or athlete. So supporting your favorite anime character or pop idol isn't just a hobby, it's driving the economy in Japan.
It's fascinating, isn't it? What stands out here is how deeply cultural phenomena can become significant economic forces, demonstrating the power of dedicated fan bases. Local governments are intensifying efforts to promote tourism at the World Exposition in Osaka, Japan, which began back on April 13th and is now in its third month. The expo has become a focal point for showcasing local food and culture, and officials are optimistic about leveraging this interest, including the oshikatsu trend, to attract tourists and boost interest in diverse regional attractions across Japan. This begs the question, what is the interplay between soft power, cultural identity, and consumer behavior? And what valuable lessons can this offer for understanding diverse global markets beyond traditional economic indicators, recognizing unique drivers of economic growth?
Right. In consumer and business news, it was the final day of Amazon Prime Day 2025. The deals were hot, the clock was ticking, and if you haven't bought that third air fryer you didn't know you needed, well, you probably missed your chance. My wallet is both relieved and slightly disappointed.
Well, it highlights the continued importance of major online sales events in driving consumer spending and influencing retail trends, even in a fluctuating global economy. It reflects the immense power of e-commerce giants in setting market expectations and the consumer behavior patterns that these massive sales events now dictate. They've essentially become a calendar event in the retail year.
Yeah, true. And on the topic of consumer brands, Prada, the luxury fashion brand, announced plans to collaborate with Indian artisans. This followed criticism and backlash over its sandal designs that some claimed resembled traditional Indian Kolhapuri chapels. Prada wisely decided to collaborate rather than just take. Good for them.
It brings to light the core dilemma about cultural exchange versus appropriation in the fashion industry. Prada aims to partner with Indian craftsmen to create new collections, particularly in footwear, seeking to engage with Indian heritage and craftsmanship. When we consider the wider context, it demonstrates how consumer pressure, social media discourse, and a growing global awareness of cultural heritage are increasingly influencing corporate social responsibility, particularly for global brands operating in diverse cultural contexts. It's a positive shift towards respectful collaboration and ethical sourcing in the fashion world, moving beyond superficial inspiration to genuine partnership.
Definitely a positive shift. Less positive news for some independent shops, though. Jellycat, known for its popular plush toys, pulled its supply from independent shop owners, leaving them confused and creating a sour taste. For some shops, Jellycat products had accounted for a significant portion of their shelf space. That's just not fluffy.
No, it's not. This illustrates the challenges faced by small, independent businesses when larger, popular suppliers change their distribution strategies. They might potentially favor larger retail chains or shift to direct-to-consumer models. It highlights vulnerabilities in the retail supply chain and the significant impact such decisions can have on local economies and the viability of small enterprises that rely heavily on key suppliers. It exposes the precarious position of smaller retailers in a market dominated by larger players.
Tough situation. Finally, in infrastructure news, a Prague railway project aimed at expanding the existing railway bridge in Prague, the capital city of the Czech Republic. It's drawing criticism due to structural issues. Prague's main train bridge is basically showing its age.
Right. This highlights an important question about long-term infrastructure investment and maintenance, particularly in historic European cities with burgeoning populations and increasing transport needs. The current bridge handles a significant portion of Prague's railway traffic, but corrosion has limited its capacity to about 60%. The projected growth in rail travel in the region poses a major transport problem, as the bridge may not be able to meet the increased demand effectively. It's a classic example of how deferred maintenance can lead to significant bottlenecks and economic costs down the line, affecting daily life and future growth potential. It shows the critical importance of investing in foundational infrastructure to support urban development and economic activity. Hashtag environmental concerns and natural disasters.
Okay, let's turn our attention to environmental concerns, starting with the immediate impacts of climate change. Millions in the UK, the United Kingdom, are facing hosepipe bans as the country's third heat wave of 2025 reaches temperatures up to 34.7 degrees C or 94.5 degrees Fahrenheit.
Yeah, what stands out here is the visible manifestation of climate change impacts on densely populated areas, affecting basic utilities like water. Highs of 34 degrees C are likely on Friday and possibly Saturday, with sweltering temperatures continuing into early next week. The heat wave is also spreading to Scotland and Northern Ireland, with Scotland expected to see its warmest day of the year up to 31 degrees C or 87.8 degrees Fahrenheit. The UK Health Protection Agency has issued warnings, emphasizing the importance of staying hydrated and taking precautions to avoid heat-related illnesses. This begs the question: what are the most effective water management strategies, public health infrastructure resilience measures, and urban planning adaptations needed in the face of increasingly frequent and intense heat events across developed nations?
And it's not just land that's heating up. The Western Mediterranean Sea has experienced its most extreme marine heat wave ever recorded for this time of year, affecting large areas of the sea for weeks on end. The Med is essentially boiling.
It's quite alarming. When we consider the wider context, marine heat waves are silent killers for biodiversity and critical ecosystems. While the heat appears to be cooling off, some marine species simply struggle to cope with such prolonged and intense warmth. This leads to potential knock-on effects for fish stocks and marine biodiversity. It highlights the specific and severe impacts of ocean warming on marine ecosystems and commercial fisheries directly linked to climate change. It's a critical indicator of broader climate impacts beyond land temperatures, affecting food security and ecological balance. And it begs the question: what is the long-term viability of marine life and the fishing industry in a warming ocean? And how quickly are these changes accelerating, impacting global food supplies and ocean health?
Serious questions. Another less discussed but equally severe impact: a new report by the United Nations World Meteorological Organization, or WMO. It found that sand and dust storms are leading to premature deaths and affecting about 330 million people globally due to climate change. That's not just a bad hair day, that's a serious public health crisis.
It really is. This brings to light the core dilemma of how climate change manifests in diverse ways globally, often with direct, severe impacts on human health. It highlights a less commonly discussed but equally significant consequence of climate change, impacting air quality, respiratory health, and agricultural productivity on a massive scale across various regions of the world. It forces us to consider the often overlooked environmental health impacts, particularly in vulnerable regions, and the urgent need for localized adaptation strategies beyond just carbon emissions reduction, especially when considering effects on air quality and public health.
And for a fascinating cultural take on climate impacts, an RT article critiques France's cultural and political resistance to air conditioning despite intensifying heat waves, like a recent one in Paris, France, with temperatures nearing 40 degrees C, or 104 degrees Fahrenheit. So, in France, it's apparently unpatriotic to be cool in a heat wave.
It's a curious situation. What stands out here is the ideological dimension to climate adaptation and personal comfort. The author recounts personal experiences maintaining AC usage amidst social disapproval and local regulation. Critics of air conditioning argue it contributes to environmental harm and promote alternatives like closing blinds. However, the author points out France's heavy reliance on nuclear energy, which doesn't emit carbon, undermining the environmental critiques of AC usage. The article highlights broader cultural norms and political discourse, illustrating how the desire for cooling is conflated with selfishness or privilege. Far-right leader Marine Le Pen advocates for expanded AC access, while left-wing and ecological groups counter that it's insufficient or a luxury for the wealthy. This begs the question: how do societies balance individual comfort and public health with broader environmental goals? Especially when the underlying energy sources are clean and the arguments are perhaps more philosophical than practical. It truly illustrates the complex interplay of culture, politics, and climate policy.
Okay, moving to major natural disasters. President Trump visited Texas in the United States to assess the damage caused by recent devastating floods. Search efforts continued for 160 missing individuals, with over 120 people reported dead. Texas is grappling with immense suffering. And then you hear the Federal Emergency Management Agency, or FEMA, couldn't answer thousands of calls. That's a major disconnect.
Yes, and when we consider the wider context, this situation highlights a crucial question about disaster preparedness and the capacity of federal agencies to respond to increasingly frequent and severe weather events. Documents revealed that FEMA failed to respond to thousands of calls from flood survivors, raising concerns about the agency's effectiveness. Viral posts spreading false claims linking a cloud seeding startup to the Texas floods were proven incorrect, which underscores the vital need for accurate information in such high-stakes situations. It highlights the need for robust communication channels, transparent information, and accountability during crises, and the public's vulnerability to both natural forces and information voids.
Absolutely. Out west, wildfires in the U.S. West have led to evacuations near the Grand Canyon in Arizona, USA. Wildfires threatening the Grand Canyon, one of the world's most breathtaking natural wonders. It's a truly sobering prospect.
It is. This highlights an important question about resource management in national parks and the increasing challenges of wildfire suppression in changing climates. The rapid spread of these wildfires posed a threat to residents and tourists. Multiple national parks in the U.S. West have been affected, including the Grand Canyon National Park and Black Canyon of the Gunnison National Park in Colorado. Authorities have taken precautionary measures to ensure safety. It underscores the need for proactive fire management strategies, including controlled burns and forest thinning, and public awareness in high-risk areas to protect both natural heritage and human settlements in these vulnerable regions.
And finally, for natural disasters, experts with the Northern Tornadoes Project confirmed a significant tornado outbreak in Saskatchewan, a province in central Canada. 10 tornadoes touching down in one day. 10 tornadoes in one day. That's certainly not a typical Tuesday.
No, indeed. This highlights the geographic reach of extreme weather events and provides a data point for discussions on the potential increasing frequency or intensity of such phenomena globally linked to climate patterns. It emphasizes the critical need for localized emergency preparedness and response systems, as these events can occur in unexpected regions, requiring communities to adapt and strengthen their resilience. #hashtag social dynamics and justice.
Okay, now to social dynamics and justice. A divided federal appeals court panel has thrown out the plea deal reached with Khalid Sheikh Mohammed. He's the alleged mastermind of the September 11, 2001 terrorist attacks and other co-defendants at Guantanamo Bay, Cuba. After all these years, the legal battles continue.
Yes, and this highlights an important question about the legal and ethical complexities of prosecuting individuals accused of mass atrocities, particularly in a military commission setting which has faced immense scrutiny. The plea agreement would have allowed Mohammed to plead guilty in exchange for avoiding the death penalty. Former Pentagon Chief Lloyd Austin had made the decision to withdraw the plea deal. This ruling, made by a divided federal appeals court, deepens the legal morass surrounding the long-stalled case. The prolonged nature of these cases underscores the challenges of balancing justice, due process, and national security interests, and the difficulty of finding closure for victims' families when legal processes are so drawn out.
In Chile, a court has upheld the prison sentence of several former military personnel and a civilian involved in the 1973 murders of Eliseo Segundo Jara Rios and Pedro Mario Alonso Muñoz Hapaplaza. These occurred during the early days of Augusto Pinochet's dictatorship. Decades later, justice is still slowly grinding forward in Chile for these atrocities.
Right. When we consider the wider context, Chile's persistent judicial efforts serve as a powerful model for other nations grappling with legacies of human rights abuses and state-sponsored violence. The crimes occurred shortly after the military coup in Victoria, a city in southern Chile. Former Captain Sergio Hernán Valenzuela González and 3 ex-soldiers received 20-year sentences. Civilian Jorge Octavio Timmer San Martin was given 19 years for complicity, while 7 other former officers and soldiers received sentences ranging from 5 to 15 years. Testimonies described the murderers as jubilant post-killing. An autopsy falsely attributed their deaths to acute anemia, while eyewitnesses reported bullet wounds. The court also mandated financial compensation of 100 million Chilean pesos, that's about $105,000 to a family member of Jara Rios, and ordered the collection of DNA samples from the convicted for national records. This begs the question about the long-term societal healing, memory, and democratic consolidation that relies on facing and accounting for historical truths, even when it means prosecuting former officials decades later.
A powerful reminder. Shifting to political threats, a Texas man, Robert Herrera, was arrested for allegedly threatening to assassinate former President Donald Trump. This was ahead of his visit to Texas Hill Country in the United States. Threats against public figures are sadly not new, but these details are chilling.
They are. This highlights an important question about the fine line between free speech and credible threats, and the critical role of social media platforms in moderating such content. The threat appeared on a local news outlet's Facebook page where Herrera, using the handle Robert Herrera, posted a comment saying, "I won't miss," along with an image of Trump following the 2024 assassination attempt in Butler, Pennsylvania, that's in the United States. That's where Trump was shot in the ear, one supporter was killed, and 2 others were injured. After being challenged, Herrera allegedly escalated the threat by responding, "I'll just come for you," and posted a photo of an assault rifle with loaded magazines. Security shortcomings around the 2024 attempt led to the resignation of then Secret Service Director Kimberly Cheadle and the suspension of 6 agents. When we consider the wider context, the security of political leaders is often a barometer of societal stability, and these incidents reflect deeply entrenched political divisions and the challenges of maintaining civil discourse in a digital age.
Definitely concerning. In the West Bank, a territory in the Middle East, west of the Jordan River, Israeli settlers have reportedly beaten to death a U.S. citizen. Other sources also report 2 Palestinians killed, including a Palestinian American, in an Israeli settler attack. Another tragic loss of life in a region where the cycle of violence is just heartbreaking to witness.
It really is. This highlights an important question about accountability and protection for civilians in conflict zones, especially in territories under occupation where tensions are consistently high. This incident underscores the escalating violence and heightened tensions in the West Bank, particularly concerning settler actions and their severe impact on Palestinian civilians, including dual nationals. It calls attention to the urgent need for accountability and protection for residents in this contested region. It highlights the complexities and dangers of living in areas with deeply entrenched political and territorial disputes, where even everyday interactions can turn deadly, and international intervention often falls short.
Now, for a story that sounds like it came straight out of a movie, Anatoly Lekodimov, a Russian cryptocurrency entrepreneur and founder of the Bitslato exchange. He's seeking a presidential pardon from Donald Trump while facing potential extradition to France. A Russian crypto figure caught in a legal limbo between the U.S. and France, appealing to a former president for clemency. Wild.
It is quite a situation. This highlights an important question about the extraterritorial reach of national laws and the complexities of international extradition, particularly in the rapidly evolving crypto space. Lekodimov was arrested in the U.S. back in January 2023 and charged with operating an unlicensed money-transmitting business tied to over $700 million in illicit transactions from drug and gambling activities. In December 2023, he pled guilty and was sentenced in July 2024 to time already served 18 months due to harsh detention conditions, though U.S. prosecutors sought a longer sentence. Initially slated for deportation to Russia, his return was halted upon France's extradition request, where he could face up to 20 more years for the same offenses. Human rights advocate Ivan Melnikov criticized the move as double jeopardy and part of a broader political crackdown on the crypto market. Melnikov expressed hope for clemency, noting a potential shift in U.S. policy following Trump's recent pardons of other crypto figures, including BitMEX executives and Silk Road founder Ross Ulbricht. When we consider the wider context, it underscores the ongoing global efforts to regulate digital assets and combat illicit financial flows, but also the potential for political considerations to influence legal outcomes and the debate around prosecutorial discretion.
Very complex. In Latin America, Adolfo Macias, also known as Fido, Ecuador's top drug lord, has agreed to U.S. extradition. This is a huge win for law enforcement and a big shakeup in the criminal underworld.
Yes, what stands out here is the cooperation between nations in combating transnational organized crime. Macias took part in a court hearing via video link from a high-security prison in Guayaquil, Ecuador. He was recaptured last month in a massive military and police operation after months of pursuit. This begs the question, what is the effectiveness of such high-profile extraditions in dismantling criminal networks and addressing the root causes of drug violence, particularly in countries like Ecuador, a nation in South America grappling with escalating insecurity? It represents a significant development in the fight against organized crime and drug trafficking, where extradition to the U.S. often signals a more robust judicial process and harsher penalties.
Okay. And staying with international crime, Giuseppe Palermo, an alleged leader of the Italian 'Ndrangheta mafia, has been arrested in Colombia. The Italian mafia's alleged leader in Latin America arrested in Colombia, a country in South America. That's a serious takedown, showing just how intertwined global crime networks are.
It really is. When we consider the wider context, this demonstrates the critical role of international law enforcement cooperation in combating sophisticated transnational criminal organizations. Palermo was wanted under an Interpol red notice in 196 countries. He is accused of overseeing cocaine shipments and managing illegal trafficking routes from Latin America to Europe. The 'Ndrangheta is one of the most powerful and secretive criminal organizations, and this arrest is a significant blow to its operations. This begs the question about the evolving strategies of drug trafficking and money laundering and the continuous efforts required to disrupt these vast illicit networks that impact economies and societies worldwide. #PubTech Public Health and Societal Wellbeing.
All right. Shifting to public health and societal well-being, we have a tragic story from Arizona, USA. A resident in northern Arizona tragically died from the pneumonic plague, in Arizona. It sounds like something out of a history book or maybe a bad movie, but it's a real reminder that old threats can still resurface.
It is, and what stands out here is the public health response to a historically significant pathogen in a contemporary setting. The pneumonic plague is a severe respiratory illness caused by the bacteria Yersinia pestis, similar to the bubonic plague. The incident raises public health awareness about the presence of this infectious disease in the region. Health authorities are likely to investigate further and take necessary precautions to prevent its spread. This begs the question: how do health authorities manage the reemergence of diseases that many might consider eradicated or confined to the past? And what is the importance of maintaining robust public health infrastructure for early detection and rapid response?
Very important questions. Moving to Africa, South African Health Minister Aaron Motsoaledi has assured Parliament that the country's globally renowned HIV/AIDS program will not collapse. This is despite the withdrawal of funding from the U.S. President's Emergency Plan for AIDS Relief, or PEPFAR. South Africa, a nation in southern Africa, is really stepping up, showing incredible resilience.
They really are. This highlights an important question about the sustainability of global health initiatives and the crucial role of national governments in prioritizing public health when external funding shifts. PEPFAR previously covered around 17% of South Africa's HIV/AIDS response. The National Treasury stepped in with R$753 million, and additional support amounting to R$600 million was pledged by global partners like the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation and the Wellcome Trust. Motsoaledi outlined the government's strategic priorities, including bolstering the public health system and eliminating diseases such as HIV/AIDS and TB. He emphasized the rollout of the new long-acting HIV prevention injection, lenacapavir, showing South Africa's commitment to innovation and the 2030 HIV elimination goals. The minister also announced infrastructure and personnel investment totaling R$6.7 billion. When we consider the wider context, South Africa's experience could serve as a powerful model for self-sufficiency and innovative health policy in the Global South. It demonstrates that strong domestic commitment can overcome significant financial hurdles and continue progress in major public health crises.
That's fantastic to hear. In consumer product safety news, Walmart has recalled 850,000 water bottles. This was after 2 consumers suffered vision loss due to the forceful ejection of bottle caps. Water bottles that can make you lose your vision. That's definitely not what staying hydrated should feel like. Yikes.
No, definitely not. This is a crucial consumer product safety issue. It highlights the importance of rigorous product design, quality control, and the swift implementation of recalls to prevent consumer injury. It underscores the responsibility of retailers for the safety of products they sell, emphasizing that even seemingly innocuous items can pose significant risks if not properly designed and manufactured. This incident reinforces the need for strong regulatory oversight and product safety to protect the public.
Yeah, absolutely. And finally, for health, an article from Popular Mechanics delves into the intriguing question of whether nightmares can lead to death. Can your nightmares kill you? It's a terrifying thought for anyone who dreams about missing deadlines or showing up to work in pajamas.
Well, it highlights an important question about the holistic view of health, where psychological stress can have profound physiological effects. While it's a very rare occurrence, sleep scientists suggest that certain conditions, like nightmare disorder, when combined with other underlying health issues, could theoretically contribute to a fatal outcome. Nightmare disorder involves recurring, extended, and extremely distressing dreams that often awaken the sleeper. While nightmares themselves are generally not lethal for individuals with heart conditions or other health vulnerabilities, the intense physiological responses like increased heart rate and blood pressure triggered by nightmares could potentially lead to complications. There's a lack of direct evidence tying nightmares directly to actual death, but the impact of severe nightmares on overall health shouldn't be underestimated, as they may exacerbate existing conditions. It encourages critical thinking about sleep health and the necessity of addressing severe sleep disturbances, particularly for individuals with underlying health vulnerabilities. The mind-body connection is far more intricate than we often realize. #global sports and cultural moments.
Okay, let's end on a lighter note with some global sports and cultural moments. At Wimbledon, the youth movement is in full swing on the men's side. In the semifinals, Jannik Sinner, at 23 years old, defeated seven-time champion Novak Djokovic 6-3, 6-3, 6-4. That sets up a highly anticipated final against Carlos Alcaraz. Djokovic later expressed his recognition of aging's impact after his loss to Sinner. Now, Sinner versus Alcaraz, it's going to be a blockbuster.
It really signifies a potential changing of the guard in men's tennis, doesn't it? With younger stars consistently challenging and now overcoming the established veterans. Alcaraz himself emerged victorious against Taylor Fritz in a semifinal match and anticipates being pushed to the limit by Sinner in what promises to be a thrilling rematch of last month's French Open showpiece. It creates excitement for the future of the sport as a new generation rises to the top, hinting at a new era of dominance.
And on the women's side, Poland's Iga Swiatek secured her first Wimbledon title in dominant fashion, defeating American Amanda Anisimova in a historic 6-0, 6-0 victory that lasted just 57 minutes, a double bagel. Talk about a dominant performance.
Swiatek's overwhelming dominance really highlights her current reign in women's tennis, while Anisimova's remarkable comeback story underscores resilience and dedication in professional sports, regardless of the final score. Anisimova, a former tennis prodigy, reached her first Grand Slam final after taking an extended break from the sport in 2023, showcasing immense determination. It shows the sheer talent and focus required to perform at that elite level and the power of personal tenacity.
Absolutely. And a big cheer for British tennis. Julian Cash and Lloyd Glasspool created history by becoming the first all-British duo to win the Wimbledon men's doubles title in 89 years. That's a long wait for a home victory. I imagine the entire nation of Britain is absolutely thrilled. They secured victory by defeating the unseeded pair of Rinky Hijikata from Australia and David Pell from the Netherlands, 6-2, 7-6, 7-3, marking their first Grand Slam title.
Fantastic result for them.
In other sports news, Tadej Pogacar emerged victorious in Stage 7 of the Tour de France, reclaiming the Tour lead, with Great Britain's only securing a commendable third position. The Welsh national rugby team secured their first international victory in 644 days, breaking an 18-match losing streak by defeating Japan 31-23 in Kobe, Japan, to level the series 1-1. England cricketer Jofra Archer made an impactful return, taking a crucial wicket in the seesaw third test between England and India, marking an almost instant impact after over 4 years out of Test cricket. And in boxing, Irish boxer Katie Taylor secured victory over Amanda Serrano once again, winning the fight on all three scorecards by a single point, 95-94, and completing the trilogy with a 3-0 sweep in New York, USA.
Quite a weekend in sports.
And in music news, Oasis topped the UK charts after a frenzy surrounding their reunion and comeback tour. Their album surged to #1, showing their enduring popularity. Finally, for a truly wild and slightly bizarre story, the mystery of a human toe found in a box at Dash Point State Park in Washington State, USA, has been solved. Turns out it was a man's gift to his granddaughter, meant to creep her out. The man had put the toe in the box 15 years ago after it was amputated due to swan neck deformity. The granddaughter mentioned it to friends, leading to its identification. Talk about a family heirloom you don't typically see on Antiques Roadshow.
Well, certainly unique and a departure from our usual global affairs, this story does highlight the unexpected ways in which personal histories can intersect with public spaces, creating, well, bizarre local mysteries. Hashtag outro. We've truly traversed a vast landscape of information today, haven't we? From the theoretical limits of mathematics and the commercialization of space, to the complex and often contradictory dynamics of global power and the very real human impacts of climate change and conflict.
Yeah, it's been a deep dive into the forces shaping our world, showing us that whether it's an AI chatbot sparking controversy or a new generation dominating Wimbledon, every story, big or small, plays a part in this interconnected global narrative.
And as we reflect on these diverse developments, maybe consider this provocative thought. In an increasingly interconnected world where information spreads instantly and events unfold at such a rapid pace, how might our individual actions and choices, no matter how small, contribute to shaping these larger global trends? And what responsibility do we have to stay informed and critically engage with the information we receive rather than just, passively consume it?
That's a powerful thought to leave you with. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Until next time, stay curious, stay informed, and keep digging for those insights.